Hi again. So I said I was going to put a little short video on assignment 5 just to give you a sort of verbal voiceover so that maybe I touch on things that are not that clear in writing. So I'm just going to go through it. So term paper, 2,000 words. Students will use the literature introduced in the course to examine how higher education instructors may have to merge and reconcile the contradictory realities of social justice practices in the classroom and neoliberal pressures on the sector. So in the Q&A already, I answered a few questions, and there was some clarification required with regards to social justice practices. So what I'm suggesting is that there's really a sort of clear dichotomy, a clear gap between everything that you're seeing up to this point and what we're going to see in section 11. And we've touched on this already because it came up in a lot of media posts and a lot of our discussions. So in the first lot of the course, the first half of the course, in terms of social justice practices, you can really scan and sort of choose the examples that you want. But we had active learning, which was discussed in the intro. We had andragogy, especially looking at the inclusion of diverse older students, constructivism, social constructivism, experiential learning. Then we had a chapter specifically, a section specific on inclusion of diverse learners in UDL, and now we're touching on critical pedagogy. All of these approaches have the characteristics of being student-centered rather than teacher-centric. They are all focused on the diversity of our learners, and they define diversity in different ways, but they all focus on the diversity of our learners. And they're focused on a progressive, transformative look at teaching, wanting to make teaching different, a desire to move teaching from a traditional stage on the stage sort of format. So all of these philosophies are different, but they all share those commonalities. On the other hand, in section 11, we will see that as instructors, we're also confronted with what I've called a neoliberal sort of lens on higher education, treating higher education as a business and therefore applying to it sort of business logics in terms of efficiency, transparency, data sharing, data collection, and things like this. This in practice for you may have to explore how this dribbles down to you as an instructor. What kind of pressures are you feeling from this business model? I've given you some hints on the paper. It could be in the way you're being assessed, in the way you're being rated, in the way your productivity is being sort of assessed, in the way you're confronting with realities in your classrooms that are not of your making, but they are the making of this business model, right? So all of these are going to be in clear conflict with everything else that we've done in the course, which was very progressive, very student-centered, very focused on learner diversities and sort of transformative goals for a more socially just higher education. The last unit in section 11 is going to be totally different, and we've again talked about this already in some of the media posts. When I say 2,000 words in higher education, normally there's an understanding that you can always go 10% less, 10% more. So really 1,800 words to 1,200, that'd be fine. I'm not strict on the word count. It's mostly to give you an idea of what I want. I don't want a huge paper. I don't want something that goes on and on. It's something fairly concise where you're showing me that you are going back on the literature that we've seen in both parts of the course, so the 10 first sections and then the last sections, and you're able to look at this in a synthetic way and show me that you've really dug and explored a little bit, and really that you've got your effective takeaways, basically, that you're taking a lot away from the course. The questions that I've put in the introductions are guiding questions. You don't have to answer them, but you will see that there's obviously a sort of general progressions from looking at the literature generally. So what's the literature showing us about, how to be student-centered, how to be focused on social justice and inclusion, and what literature is showing us as well, that we are a business and we work on the business models. So being able to show us that there's literature on both sides, and to show us that really it amounts to two different imperatives that are just as pressing for an instructor to do all this, everything that we've looked at in this course, but also not to look at this and avoid an understanding that while you're being asked to do all this, you're also being asked to function as an employee in a business-like organization. Maybe look in the literature. I haven't given you hints there, but maybe you want to also explore the literature a little bit and see if anyone's talked about navigating this tension. Maybe look at some of the phenomenological literature around instructors talking about their practice and how they're dealing with 21st century work in the 21st century sort of post-secondary education. There's probably some out there. Just about everything that we do, someone writes about it, so you may be able to find a little bit of literature out there. That's a bonus. That's really if you have time and if you're interested in digging a little bit. But I think you've got plenty from the course readings to offer. And then obviously, as every paper, you only have 2,000 words. You're not going to have much space for this, but you want to look towards the future too. So what are some of the solutions that you see? So solutions that could be theoretical, they could be organization-wide in terms of leadership, in terms of structure and culture, or they could be individual solutions. So things that you yourself as an instructor are seeing in terms of personal sustainability, in terms of balancing your career, in terms of advancing your career path in a way that makes sense while negotiating these two poles in your career. Again, first person, I ask you to at the end to do a bit of reflective, sort of thinking on your own practice. So if you want to use the first person, that's fine. I would just take a line or two to explain that you're entering into reflection. Therefore, you think it's more adequate to use the first person. Otherwise, if you don't feel comfortable, you can write in the traditional format and just use the third person. Call yourself the author. That's what we do in journal articles as well. And then you have the expectations, and the expectations. By the way, I had said this in the Q&A video I just posted. I had overlooked something there. The expectations that were there previously were the expectations for section 4. I proofread, but I must have been tired, completely missed it. So I've rectified that. So the document is uploaded now, is the correct one. So if you've looked at it previously, please look at it again, because those ones make sense. The other ones didn't make any sense. And then you've got the objectives, and you have the marking scheme. The marking scheme, as you know, is where you can copy paste and highlight what you've achieved. The objectives, they're threefold. That's my view of what I'm trying to get out of this assignment. It's always good to look at this, because then you see why the instructor has chosen that assignment. It's sort of a recap. We've had a lot of collaborative forums. We've had a lot of sections where you've had a lot of freedom in the degree to which you sort of explore the readings. This is a nice recap at the end to make sure that you're getting a nice full scope overview of the readings that are offered to you and the topics that are offered to you throughout the course. So it's a nice synthetic sort of overview of the course itself, so that you can show me that you've understood what all of these different approaches and philosophies to teaching that are trying to be progressive are trying to do, and that there's this opposite current of literature, which is really asking you to do something very different. And I think in essence, it also is a very real world assignment, because it's going to reflect the realities of what you're faced with, in terms of, it's great to have this course, it's great to talk about all these teaching philosophies, but you're not applying them in a vacuum. You're applying them in a context that sometimes is contradictory, a context that's telling you to do all these things that we've looked at, but is also telling you, to be efficient and productive and time efficient, and to deal with great numbers of students. So, that it's the reality of practice, I think, in the 21st century. And obviously, the third objective is that you also are practicing academic writing. I avoid applying that objective in all of my assignments, but it is a master's level assignment, objective. So at one of the assignments has to tackle that as an outcome, and this is the one where we really are practicing the APA, the presentations, the tone of academic writing, all of these things. Again, this is an assignment that you can, first of all, make an appointment and discuss it with me further in the last week if you want some guidance. And also, you can definitely send me a draft, and I can give some feedback before you finalize and you polish up. I'm not worried about deadlines either, so feel free to do all the discussions with me and to look at your drafts and things. But you can certainly take an extra week after the course to finish this off. There's no pressure on you there. So I hope this helps, and I'm going to post this right away and make an indication in the news form that I've posted this.